The crackling fire cast flickering shadows on our faces, a circle of eager campers daring each other to share their scariest stories. I thrived in this atmosphere, relishing the thrill of fear. I leaned in, ready to tell my tale. "Have you heard about the vengeful spirit of Blackwood Pines?" I began low. "They say she was a woman wronged, betrayed by her lover, and heartbroken. She is always roaming these woods, looking for revenge on anyone who dares to invoke her name." The group leaned in, eyes wide, hearts pounding. I spun a yarn of her cries echoing through the trees, of campers going missing, swallowed by the dark. Each time I mentioned her name, I felt a chill. Still, I pressed on, sensing the tension. "Those who hear her whispers at night." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "They vanish without a trace, lost to the spirit's rage." A sudden puff of wind fanned the fire, and I seemed to hear from afar a dismal wail. I thrilled. Then came the tale's conclusion, and a loud burst of laughter drowned my last words. My friends laughed at ghosts. We retired early to bed, ridiculing the terrors of my story. But then, Sam didn't come back. He hadn't returned from the bathroom. An hour passed. We called out, worry creeping in. "He's probably just messing with us," someone said. But the laughter had died. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I tossed and turned in my tent, sleep eluding me. Suddenly, images filled my mind. Sam's face twisted in panic. I shot up. "Sam!" The dream shifted. The woman stood there, her hair wild, her eyes hollow. "You called to me," she whispered, and the words curled around my mind. "You wakened my pain." I woke, racing. The dawn brought no sign of Sam. Our group erupted into panic. We searched the woods, calling his name. The trees swallowed our voices. Hours passed and despair settled in. That night, as we gathered once more, the weight of the eyes upon me was palpable. "It's your fault," Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. "You told the story. You brought this on us." I defended myself. It was just a story, but I could see the doubt. I felt it too. I had mocked something I didn't understand. I drifted into sleep, haunted by dreams of the woman. "You must pay," she said. "He is mine now." I woke to a rustle outside. I unzipped the tent, heart pounding. The woods loomed dark and silent. I stepped out. The air was thick, oppressive. My breath came in shallow gasps. "Sam?" I called, but no answer. Just the trees whispering secrets. Suddenly, Jenna appeared. "Did you hear that?" she said, eyes wide. It sounded like crying. We followed the sound. It drew us deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around us. Shadows danced. And then I saw her. The vengeful spirit, her face twisted in fury. I stumbled back. "No, I didn't mean to," I cried. But she raised a finger, pointing at me. "You summoned me. You must choose." "Choose what?" I stammered, fear coursing through me. The spirit glanced to the side. There in the underbrush lay Sam's backpack. Jenna gasped. "What did we do?" I turned back to the spirit. "What do you want?" She smiled, all teeth and darkness. "A life for a life." "No," I shouted. But the ground trembled. "Someone must take his place," she spat, her voice reverberating between the trees, "or you will all suffer." I looked at Jenna. Her eyes were filled with terror. I couldn't let her suffer. "Take me," I screamed. "Let him go." The spirit laughed, an ice-cold sound. "You think you can bargain with me? You trivialized my pain. You will pay dearly." In an instant, the world around us warped. I felt myself being pulled. Darkness enveloped me. I screamed, but no sound came out. I was falling into nothingness. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the campsite. The fire still crackled. My friends sat around, oblivious. I felt a cold sweat on my skin. Sam was gone. I could still hear his laughter, echoing in my mind. I was back, but something was wrong. The night felt thicker, heavier. I looked at my friends. They smiled, but their eyes were vacant, like they didn't see me. I stood, heart pounding. "Sam?" I whispered. But the woods remained silent. I shivered, realizing I was alone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Sam? I pulled it out. "Help me." The screen flickered and a ghostly face appeared. The woman. My heart dropped. I had invoked forces beyond comprehension. The woods were alive with her rage. And now I was part of her story. The fire crackled softly, its glow flickering against the dark trees. I leaned back on my log, staring into the flames. I had always found peace in nature, a break from the chaos of life. But this campsite? It felt different. The locals spoke of the ancient burial ground in its vicinity. They said the restless spirits could be heard whispering in the wind. Superstition, I thought. Just stories to scare tourists. I laughed at their warnings, labeling them the remnant of ignorance. That night, I lay in my tent, the chill creeping in. The wind howled and I struggled to sleep. Then I heard it, a faint whisper. "Mark." I sat up, heart racing. I brushed it off as the wind playing tricks. I closed my eyes, tried to think of anything else, but the whispers returned. "Mark?" My stomach dropped with unease as I grabbed my flashlight and headed outdoors. The dark woods lay shrouded, the shadows hanging in from the trees. Nothing. I got back into my tent and shook off my paranoia. It was just rational again. I am completely alone out here. Only nature noise around me. The whispering wouldn't go away. Instead, it was louder. Insistent. "Mark? Come play." I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to confront this. I stepped out again, flashlight in hand. The air was thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. I followed the whispers, deep into the woods. Each step felt like a pull, dragging me closer to something waiting in the dark. Then I saw them. Ghostly figures emerged from the mist. I stumbled back, my breath catching. They looked familiar. Faces from my past, twisted in pain. I knew them all. "Mark," they whispered again, their voices merging into one haunting chorus. I remembered. Each face reminded me of something wrong. A moment wanted wiped out. The friend abandoned in a weak moment. The lover that was betrayed for a no-good selfish desire. Each ghost a reflection of my guilt. "Why are you here?" I shouted as the anger rose within. "You're not real." "Are we?" one figure replied, stepping closer. It was her, the girlfriend I let slip away. "You left us behind, Mark. We are the ghosts of your choices." I shook my head, desperate to deny it. "No, you can't be real. I'm just imagining this." The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Face your past, you cannot run." I turned to flee, but the woods twisted around me. The path I took vanished, replaced by shadows. I was trapped. I collapsed to the ground, hands covering my ears. "Stop! Just stop!" But the figures enclosed me, their faces contorting to grotesque masks of betrayal and regret. They reached for me, fingers touching my skin, cold and unyielding. I felt their pain, their loss. I couldn't escape the truth any longer. Each whisper pierced deeper. "You thought you could forget, but we live inside you. We are your shadows." The earth shook beneath my feet. I could feel the burden of their accusations, the dark pressure building. I was smothering in my guilt, unable to breathe. "Mark?" They leaned in closer, breath cold as ice. "You can't hide forever. We will always be here." I screamed. The sound echoed through the trees, swallowed by the night. Abruptly, it was quiet. I opened my eyes, was back in camp, the fire crackling. A nightmare? I went running for my tent in a bid to get solace. The whispers, soft and haunting like a lullaby now, started again. "Mark, we're always with you." I lay down, my heart racing. I thought about packing up, getting away from this damned place. But I knew better. Whispers that followed me, no matter where I went. The past was my shadow, a constant reminder of my failures. And in that darkness, I knew I could never be free. My guilt would always echo and haunt me. I hadn't planned on this. The fog wrapped around me like a shroud, thick and suffocating. Every step along the trail was a step backward in time, to memories I'd buried deep. I was alone, or so I thought. It had a reputation, the forest. Whispers about silence, swallowing sound whole. I used to laugh at such stories. Nature lovers like myself should embrace it, not fear it. Still, with every step I made, unease crept up my spine. The trees towered above, their limbs twisted, almost into skeletal fingers. Then I saw it. A rusted pocket knife half buried in the dirt. My heart sank. It was my father's. The knife he always brought on our hikes. I picked it up, its familiar weight grounding me. But something was off. The knife wasn't just old, it looked as though it was used for something more sinister. I tossed it aside. I kept on, hoping the sensation would go away. The trail turned and twisted, then led deeper into the fog. I stumbled upon a weathered tree trunk with carvings. My father's name was scratched in the bark, the letters jagged and uneven. Memories came back, but they were different now, distorted. I remembered a sunny day, laughter, and a bond that once cherished. Now, however, the laughter sounded hollow. It came back to me, as if to mock me. I turned and scanned the trees. Was it for memories that I came here, or to chase shadows? Then I heard it. A soft whisper, chilly. "Sarah," I froze. The voice was unmistakable. My father's. It beckoned me deeper into the fog. Part of me wanted to run, but curiosity anchored my feet. I followed the sound, my heart racing. The deeper in I went, the more of him was there. A tattered backpack stuck on a branch. That old camera we took pictures with. Every object was twisting my memories into nightmares. I almost heard him call for me, but the tone shifted. It turned urgent, desperate. "Help me, Sarah." I stumbled upon a clearing. The fog parted, revealing a small pond. It was eerily still, reflecting the twisted branches above. And there, at the edge, stood a figure. My father. He looked just as I remembered, but something was off. His eyes were hollow, cold, devoid of warmth. "You found me," he said, voice dripping with an unsettling calm. "Dad?" I stammered. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, and the earth beneath him began to shift, as if the land itself were alive. "You have to understand. I never left you. I was always here." The pond ruffled. Faces came in the water, distorted, twisted versions of our past. Mom's smile, my childhood laughter, all warped and grotesque. I recoiled. "No, this isn't right. Embrace it," he said, louder, more insistent. My heart raced. I stepped back, but the fog surged forward, carrying me closer to the pond. The faces contorted, silently screaming, their mouths open wide in agony. "Help us," they cried. "No," I shouted. The word was flung back, but it was weak, lost in the silence. I spun and started to run. The ground gave way beneath me. Roots curled around my ankles, yanking me down. The fog clung thick as a noose. I struggled in its grasp, but it grew louder, the whispers drowning out my mind. "You can't escape, Sarah." I stumbled, falling into the pond. The water was cold, like ice. I plunged deeper, and the faces surrounded me, pulling me under. I fought against their grasp, but they held tight. The whispers turned to screams. "Join us." I was starved for air, yet there wasn't any. My identity slipped away like sand between my fingers. Memories buckled and twisted, and the pain, the regret flowed once more. I was losing myself, drowning in the past. Then, in an instant, I pierced the surface. I gasped, the fog receding. The clearing was empty. No pond, no father, just the rustling of leaves and the haunting silence of the forest. I was alone again, but the fear remained. The memories would never leave. They were imprinted on my soul, a dark reminder of what I could never escape. The trail ahead beckoned, but I knew better. I turned and went back, the shadow of my father in the fog. As I left, a piece of me stayed behind, lost forever in that haunted forest. The crackling of the campfire, the little glow that flickered in the dark around us, the dancing shadows amongst the trees, and the whooshing wind whispering secrets that only the woods could hear. I sat cross-legged on the ground, my peers gathered around, waiting for some form of entertainment. I had to impress them. I needed to erase the memory of my last mistake when I lost a child during a hike. "I've got a story," I announced, feeling the weight of their eyes. "A legend about the lake." They leaned in, intrigued. "Years ago, a young boy drowned here. His name was Tommy. He was just 8, always chasing frogs and splashing in the water. One day, he slipped. They say he never came back up." A chill ran down my spine. I could feel the tension mounting. I continued. "Some say he still haunts these woods. They say if you listen closely at night, you can hear him calling for help." Laughter erupted. "You're full of it, Jenna," someone shouted. But I pressed on, feeding off their energy. As I spun my tale, an odd thrill coursed through me. I exaggerated the details, I fabricated every twist. But deep down, some part of me nagged on and on. Was twisting tragedy into entertainment wrong? I refused to entertain it. I wanted to be accepted. That night, while lying in my tent, I couldn't get the feeling out of my head that there was somebody watching me. I told myself it was nerves. I shut my eyes and tried to sleep. Then came the whispers. "Help me," a soft voice called. I jolted awake. My heart was racing as I peered outside. The moon hung low, and an eerie glow cast itself over the camp. I stepped out, drawn by the voice. "Tommy?" Silence. I took a step forward, then another. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. The trees loomed like sentinels, their branches twisting in unnatural shapes. "Help me," the voice came again, clearer now. I followed it, my breath shallow. I was in the woods, the campfire's light fading behind me. And then, I saw him. A figure stood at the edge of the lake, a child-soaked, ghostly pale. His hair clung to his forehead, his eyes dark, hollow pits boring into me. "You lied," he whispered, his voice like ice. "You woke him." I stumbled back. "Who?" "The one who took me. He's angry." Panic surged through me. "I didn't mean to." "Your lies woke him. He wants more." Then suddenly the water boiled and a shadow reared itself upward. It was enormous, monster-like, a thing out of nightmare. I started to turn and run, but the earth shifted under me, and roots writhed over my ankles, holding me fast. "Help!" screamed Tommy in an echoing agony. I clawed at the earth, desperation fueling my fight, but the darkness was thick, suffocating. The shadow loomed closer, a gaping maw ready to swallow me whole. "Your stories gave him strength," Tommy cried, his face twisted in sorrow. "You must make it right." "Right?" I gasped. "How?" "Tell the truth." In that instant, it dawned on me. I had turned a tragedy to my advantage, and now I was standing on the edge of my own destruction. "I'm sorry," I yelled, my voice cracking. "I'll tell the truth. I'll never lie again." The shadow hesitated, weighing my words, it seemed. The ground released me, and I tumbled backward, breathless. Then, silence. The woods grew still. I opened my eyes to find myself back in camp, sleeping soundly with my friends, unaware of the nightmare. Morning light flooded the campsite. I felt empty, haunted. I gathered them all around the fire, my heart racing in my chest. "I need to tell you something," I began, my voice firm. "The story I told last night wasn't true. Tommy was a real boy, and he didn't deserve what I did." Confusion spread across their faces, but I pressed on. I shared the truth, the drowning, the grief, the pain. As I spoke, I felt the weight lift. The darkness that had clung to me began to dissipate. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the whispers returned. "Help me," echoed through the trees. I shivered. Tommy's voice faded, replaced by the deeper, darker tone of the shadow. "More," it demanded. And just like that, I realized the truth. Some stories are never meant to be told. I wanted to be out of the city chaos for some time. An isolated campsite with big cliffs and thick woods appeared to me like perfection. I thought that place could help stimulate my mind. So I packed my gear in my truck and drove hours just to disappear in nature and let creativity kick in. The first night, the air was still. All I could hear was the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a night owl. I set up my easel and painted the moonlight, casting shadows on the trees. My brush moved easily, capturing the calm beauty around me. But then things changed. The next morning, I woke up with a bad feeling. I looked at my painting from last night. It was familiar, yet not quite right. The shadows seemed to shift, almost alive. I shook it off, thinking I was imagining things. I began another new piece as the evening was falling. This one was darker. I painted a storm brewing over the cliffs. The wind picked up, howling through the trees. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced around, but the woods were empty. Just shadows. The next day, something uncanny happened. The scene of a storm that I painted came alive. Dark clouds rolled in and rain poured down. I did not leave my tent as the happenings really unnerved me. Coincidence, I kept telling myself. But that night, I started another. I put a figure this time at the edge of the woods, face and form shrouded in dark, hidden. I felt a chill rise up my spine as I painted and could not get the feeling out of my head that it was staring back at me. The next morning, I woke with a figure standing by my tent. Opening the flap, it was no longer there. My heart racing, I got out into the trees, scanning them. Nothing, just silence. Shaking, I went back to the easel, shaking. I painted some more. And there, now better formed than ever before, was that figure with malevolently hungry eyes. It became breezy, the trees rustling, their susurrus very nearly words, to keep on painting. Days went by, and with each canvas, the terrors escalated. I painted tragedies, the campsite ablaze, something in the darkness, a body lying in the forest. Each scene played out in reality shortly after. I could feel them pull me deeper inside, the shadowy figures in my mind coaxing me for more. I tried to stop. I painted a peaceful landscape, hoping to rid myself of their influence. But it was futile. The shadows grew stronger, more demanding. I heard their whispers, dark promises of fame and power if I continued. But at what cost? My creativity felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I was losing control. One night, I painted feverishly. I almost could feel the figures looming behind me, urging me on. I painted a last scene, a campfire circled with shadows, their faces twisted with glee. I stopped, horrified. I couldn't bear to think of what that meant. But it was too late. The fire crackled to life, ablaze in the darkness. The shadows drew closer, whispering my name. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet were glued to the ground. Then I saw them, faces emerging out of the darkness, their mouths contorted in grotesque smiles. It was they who were supposed to be from my paintings, I who had summoned them, and they wanted more than just my art. They wanted my soul. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as realization dawned on me. I was not the artist, I was the canvas. I fled into the woods, branches tearing at my clothes. They followed, shadows weaving through the trees, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. I was trapped in my own creation, a prisoner of my own mind. I ran and ran until I could not run anymore. I fell to the ground, gasping for breath, and then looked up. The silhouettes were all around me, their eyes shining bright with hunger, and then it clicked. They were the stories I painted, tragedies yet to be written. And as they reached for me, I knew I had become part of the horror. I had fed their darkness with my creativity. I had painted my own doom. In that instant, I lost it all. The artist became the art, the stories my reality, and the shadows my fate. The crackling of a fire only added life to this campsite. Laughter then carried through the trees, while I felt different. It was the city guy, the one who could handle everything. Nature, please. I'd conquered more challenging situations in the concrete jungle. Don't go near that cabin, Lisa warned, her face as white as snow. It's haunted, they say. People go but never come back. I laughed it off. Ghost stories, just tales to scare kids. The cabin loomed in the distance, its windows like empty eyes watching us. I had to see it. Ben, seriously, Mike chimed in. You're not gonna go poke around in there, right? Of course not, I said, smirking. I'm just going to take a look. I grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the cabin, the laughter fading behind me. Each step felt heavier, the air thicker. The door creaked open with a push. Inside, the darkness swallowed me. Dust particles danced in the light of my flashlight. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, revealing the rotten wood below. It smelled of mildew and something else, something foul. Then I saw them. Photographs plastered across the walls. Each one showed a group of campers smiling, but it wasn't their faces that chilled me. It was the dates scrawled beneath each picture. They were all marked for the same time each year, today's date. The last photograph took my breath away. It showed a group standing right where I had been camping. They looked so alive, so happy. I glanced at the date, today. A sudden noise made me jump. I spun around, the beam of my flashlight shaking. The door slammed shut. Panic clawed at me. I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Let me out, I yelled, my voice cracking. Silence answered. I turned back to the photographs. My heart raced. I scanned every face, searching for a sign, but they all stared blankly back at me. That's when I noticed something moving in the corner of my eye. A figure stood just outside the window. I couldn't see it clearly, but I felt its gaze. Cold sweat ran down my spine. I stepped closer. Then it moved, a shadow, tall and thin. It slipped into the forest. I knew I should stay inside, but the urge to follow was overwhelming. I pushed against the door again. This time, it opened. Somehow, my heart still raced when I stepped outside. The moonlight painted the path ahead. I followed the shadow deeper into the woods. The trees twisted around me, branches reaching like skeletal hands. I could hear rustling, whispering. Ben, my name echoed, a haunting melody. I turned, but there was nothing. Just trees. I was alone. Ben, join us. The voice was closer this time. I stumbled around, trying to find my way back, but the path twisted even more than my mind. I was lost. Then I saw it once more. The shadow. It stood waiting. I approached, heart pounding. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling. Come closer, it beckoned. I hesitated. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't a ghost. It was something worse. A predator, just waiting to pounce. Suddenly, everything changed. The trees contorted. The earth beneath me bucked. Time distorted. I was back in the cabin, but everything felt off. The photographs now depicted faces I knew. My friends. They smiled, but their eyes were empty. I rushed to the door, but it wasn't there. Just a wall. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me. "Join us, Ben," I screamed, then silence. I woke up in the cabin, the photographs blank. I glanced at my watch. It was the same time as before, but the date had changed. A year had passed. The door swung open. "Ben," Lisa's voice broke through. "We thought you were gone." I tried to speak, but no words came out. "Let's get out of here." As we left, I saw the photographs hanging on the wall. Empty. Just a blank space where my face should be. I was supposed to be next. But I was here. And now, I realized, I was just another ghost story. Time had warped around me, and I was still being hunted. The forest sighed, and from somewhere in the dark, I could hear the whispers again.
Thanks for joining us in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories every week. Have you got a story of your own? Share it in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And remember, the darkness holds many secrets. Are you brave enough to uncover them? Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked. Sweet nightmares.